In this video, we're going to look at how to remove spaces in Excel files. Now, when we're working with data sets, it can be very important to understand if there are any blanks or spaces in our data that might interfere with any of our data analysis or our formulas. And in this lesson, we'll go through a few different examples of where spaces could interrupt with our formulas, as well as ways to troubleshoot and fix that. In this example, we have product code description, unit price, category information here. And we have a lookup table with the same product code and then some inventory and sales data. And we want to combine these two reports into one table. And so if we're doing this, we could use a simple lookup function such as XLOOKUP based on product code, looking that into this product code array, pulling over in stock. And if not found, we can have it return that was not found. Do an exact match, search, and close out. And here you can see that our formula is returning not found. And if we were to visibly look into these product codes, we could see by looking at the formula bar that nothing seems to be different between these. But if we were to click into one of these product codes, we could then see that there's an extra space at the end. So anytime one of our formulas does not work as expected, always good to go into that cell and check if there's any blank spaces. Now, if we do find that there's blank spaces, so if this data was pulled from a different data source or pulled from the internet or downloaded from a PDF, sometimes we might run into cases where those extra spaces exist. So there's a few different ways that we can handle that. One option would be using the trim function, which would be start by typing trim, selecting the text, and this will now trim out any extra spaces within the text. And if we were to pull that down and copy and paste into here, we could see that this formula now works. And let's undo that. And we'll show another example which could work is using a substitute function, contribute type substitute. We'll click on our product code text, and the old text we want to replace is a space, so we'll do a quote, space, quote, and the new text we want to replace that with is no spaces, so we'll just do a quote, quote, without any space in between. We'll close that. Then let's pull this formula down, and if we were to copy and paste it into product code, we can see that that also worked. So those are two formula ways which we could address extra space. And one additional option we could do is to select our array, hit Control H. And then in this case, we want to find a space. So we'll make sure that there's nothing here. We'll hit our space bar. And then we'll want to make sure that that's replaced with nothing. And we'll hit Replace All. And there we can see that that formula now works again. And then we could copy this over to this cell and then drag over to our weekly sales. And there we can have our table fully completed. Now let's take another look at an example that will look similar. So let's say we do the same thing where we do our lookup function on product code into this product code array. We want to return our in stock. And if not found, let's return not found. And pull this down. Okay, and let's do our same function that we did last time. We can do trim, pull this down. And if we copy and paste into here, we can see that that did not work. And we might ask ourselves the question, why did that not work? And let's click back into our trim. And we can see that there's still a space at the end of this. And we just used a trim function in this first example, and that worked totally fine. So what's different about this example? Now, if you ever run into this case, and another way that you could also check that these aren't equal is by using the equal and setting these two cells that you think should be equal to each other and see if that returns false, then you know that those are not equal. And this can be a more tricky example, but within Excel, there is two different types of spaces that might pop up. So one is a regular space, which is what we saw in the first example. then Excel also has something called a non-breaking space. So those are going to look the same to us, where it's assumed to look like a space, and we can check that in the formula bar. But one way that we can check if there is a non-breaking space is to use the code function in Excel, referencing that space, and we see that we're getting two different values returned for the spaces. So if you ever suspect that you have non-breaking spaces by removing the normal spaces and that's still not working, this can be a good handy way to check. So now the question goes to, how do we actually address the non-breaking spaces? So we look at our trim function, and that is only going to handle the normal spaces. So we can actually handle this a couple ways. So one being with the substitute function, which we can do substitute. We'll select our text. And in this case, the old text we'll want to remove is the non-breaking space. And off to the side here is a keyboard shortcut to enter a non-breaking space. So in this case, we can hold down Alt, hit 0160, and we can see that a space just got entered. And then close our quote, add a comma. Then in this case, we'll want to replace that with nothing to remove that. And we'll close that and pull down our formula. And then let's paste this over. And there we can see that this formula is now working. And let's undo that. And one other way that we could do this is similar to the find and replace that we did last time. So once again, we'll highlight our array, we'll hit Control H. In this case, we'll want to find our non-breaking space. So we'll hit Alt 0160. And we can see that our extra space got entered. And then we'll replace that with no space. Hit OK, close that. And here you can see that our in-stock number is now populated. Once again, we can copy that formula over, have it reference last week's sales, pull that down, and there we have now combined these data sets. So those are two ways to remove all the extra spaces in data sets. So using the trim function, the substitute function, and also if you ever run into the case where you're running into non-breaking spaces, they're a little bit trickier to find how to handle those.